I think there are a couple of assumptions floating that we should make more apparent.
Yeah.
And one of those assumptions is the notion that more information, that when we know better, we do better.
Thank you.
Right? Is that true? That's the first question. Right? Can we trust that more facts, more information, we are in an information super age in many ways. We have more information at our fingertips than we've ever had before. And now people are saying they don't trust any of it, right? Now we have a crisis of expertise. We have a crisis where folks don't trust the news. Everyone feels anti-institutional. Everybody is a Wikipedia expert and a Facebook PhD and all this kind of stuff, right? And so the democratization of knowledge has also made it really hard for people to actually sort of settle in on a truth, because now you can find any narrative that supports what you want to be true. So I think we've got to first think about, Deva, whether what the real challenge is an understanding of history. And the reason that I say that is because I feel like I don't have any benevolent sort of narratives about America, but I grew up in the Deep South. I'm from a small town in northern Louisiana, so it is evangelical Republican country. And I grew up there in the 1990s. And even in the 90s, even in a conservative place like that where most folks voted Republican, I feel like my classmates would say the racism our grandparents engaged in was wrong. There wasn't, like, people said it was wrong, and that's not who we're trying to be. So when I look at their politics now and they're deeply conservative, I'm always trying to figure out how to reconcile people who had a clear sense of the wrongness of history and its tragedies, and yet they now support politicians who would reinstantiate those same systems. And so what I want to suggest is that I don't actually think this is about whether we know more or we don't, and I think that that is really hard for people who see themselves as liberal-minded folks who are reading books and who are trying to understand. I read this piece in the Post this week about new social psychological literature that says that one of the things we can see in the literature around conservative folks versus more liberal folks is that people who tend to vote for conservative positions or take conservative positions are far more fearful about drastic, terrible things happening. This research says that even the fear centers of their brains are larger, that they're born that way, right? And that the people who are less given to fear typically are more risk takers and so more invested in a liberal project. Now, let's, for the sake of argument, say that that is true, right? And that doesn't fall along racial lines. If you think about, I come out of a Black Christian tradition, and fear is used to make you follow all those rules. That's how it works, right? Bad things happen if you don't do, So what happens if we actually get away from and look, this is hard for me because I became a professor because I believe in a finely crafted argument, right? That is who I am at my core. So when I have to start thinking about people's feelings, it really irritates me. I want to say that. But I think that we are actually in a moment where we're going to have to figure out how to talk to people about the politics of fear. Because I don't actually think that this moment has anything to do with information. I think it has everything to do, if you're asking us, Deva, how does it change our politics? Well, one of the things that we're gonna have to do is sort of, one, really begin to ask people, what is it that you're afraid of, right? And why are you afraid of it? And who do you think is the enemy? And why do you think that they're the enemy? Right? And give people tools to think more critically about the things that they fear and to assess whether those fears are real and from whence they come. And if we can start to think about the emotions that people feel about this moment, maybe then we'll actually be in a better position to get people to hear us. I think that many white folks in this country think that, look, at home anytime, my mama would just call me sometimes and she would say, every time there's a mass shooting, all of the white people that I work with start stockpiling guns. And they start talking about how Obama is gonna take our guns, right? And so she said that literally her coworkers will be going to the pawn shops and buying up all these guns, right? And so they have the opposite reaction. They don't fear the shooter, they fear that their rights are going to be taken away. right? And so we've got to figure, like, look, I don't want to talk to those people who think this way, but they're some of your people, so you need to talk to them, right? About these guns and these fears. So if we're talking about what does it take to change our politics, what it takes to change our politics is to figure out the emotional and affective investments that people have in keeping the world the same or changing it, right?